Hi, my name is Andrea Canchola, and I have interviewed a professor and a high school teacher in hopes of educating our community on the controversial topic that is censorship in education. So, how have censorship policies affected your curriculum?
Personally, they haven't affected my curriculum directly. I haven't been asked by any agents of the state to modify or change or delete anything from the courses that I teach. And I've been in higher ed 10 years teaching university and college students. So it hasn't directly affected me. Um, I know that there are what I know about it is what I hear, what I see being reported. For example, about Texas A&M and some other universities where there are some questions about what they're allowed to talk about anymore here in Texas, and it varies by state.
Are there any specific examples that you could give me?
Well, from what I know about like gender and sexuality issues, that they don't want classes with that subject as the central component. I've heard or seen some reporting suggesting that any of those topics in any class being discussed can be problematic. I haven't changed what I'm doing though, so if they want to come after me, I guess they certainly can.
Mhm. So, how do you think these changes impact students or society as a whole?
I think it's unfortunate that it's limiting what students can learn and limiting what professors can teach because essentially you're depriving students of the ability to think independently by putting constraints, and those constraints are being put on us by non-educators. They're being put on us by politicians who most of them are lawyers or business owners and not educators. There are some. I wish there were more educators in elected positions because I think that is an important perspective that's missing, and not just in national politics, but in state and local politics as well.
Mhm. So, what do you think that society or students should do to combat this issue?
Doing projects like this, I think, are important, and it's what universities are for. Having debates about this, that's what universities are for, right? You don't want to have these very sensitive and concerning debates at Thanksgiving dinner with family. I mean, those are the worst places to have it. You have to have it in the university classroom so that you can talk about it openly and honestly and not worry that, again, some agents of the state are going to come in and bonk you on the head with a club. Um, so students need to assert themselves. Faculty need to assert themselves and say, look, we are the experts. We understand that, we're being paid by taxpayer dollars, and we understand there are rules and regulations. It's not just anything goes, but any changes should really be rooted in creating smarter and more critical thinkers rather than a bunch of drones who aren't being given the benefit of a broad liberal arts education. um, Liberal arts degrees are sought after by employers, not necessarily because it's liberal arts, but because you finished a college degree. Finishing anything is always a good sign. So I think not allowing the powers that be to just set the agenda 100%. We have to push back.
How have censorship policies affected your curriculum, if at all?
Um, the laws that are in place in the state of Texas do prevent teachers from teaching certain subjects, specifically if they are politically charged in a way. More current events tend to be discouraged from being discussed in a classroom. There are laws in place that prohibit that, and they can put a danger in a teacher's certification. There's also local district laws that apply. Depending on a district by district basis, you can have certain districts that may be a lot more tough when it comes to what you teach in the classroom or what you don't or can't. Um, they might not call it censorship, but the fact that you're not allowed to express certain ideas freely is the idea of censorship. And it's not because it's not age appropriate. It is because it goes counter to either people who are in power in a certain school district or maybe at the state level. Um, and that can hinder the goals of certain classes in English, in political science, or government politics, and of course in history.
Mm. Are there any specific topics that teachers are told not to talk about?
Definitely current events that have to do with political climate issues. When we're getting close to presidential elections, gubernatorial elections, senatorial elections, policies, we cannot discuss certain issues. And it doesn't have to be something like who do you support or who you're against, but simply not being able to discuss controversial issues can hinder a lot of learning from taking place for a lot of students. And that being the case, it stifles growth. It doesn't allow a student who's maybe possibly getting ready to vote that same year or maybe the following year. It can prevent them from going into a situation with full knowledge of what they should know.
Mm-hmm. So, how do you think that these policies impact students or society as a whole in the long run?
In the long run, if you stifle teachers and students from discussing these things, it's it's almost like a barrier, an invisible barrier. It's taboo to talk about these things. You should not address these issues. When you start doing that, maybe in the future, a student may feel like they don't have the freedom to speak about these things. When you make it not okay to discuss in a certain situation, it kind of makes it okay to stop talking about those same issues in other contexts too. So, like what you and I may discuss or not discuss in a classroom is kind of what's going to end up happening in a rally or in a social setting, a cafeteria between you, your friends, you and adults, your home between you, your parents, or your kids. So allowing people, like if we look historically at what founding fathers and a lot of politicians have tried to gather over time, is this ability to educate our population the most they possibly can to make the best possible decisions, and not allowing that little bit of information to be discussed in a classroom directly with students is going to stifle them. It's going to create a barrier of knowledge, and for sure, it creates this ideology that it's not okay to discuss politics in other contexts. Like it's like I have to keep these ideas to myself. Kind of is kind of like what we're telling students. If you have political ideas, don't do it. If you want to put it into a context of something that's happening today, like we had a protest against deportations and ICE happening in certain high schools, and the consequence for some of those students was suspension. Teachers that are trying to assist those students to navigate those protests, their careers may be in jeopardy, and the government, our state government, is making direct threats on the idea of like, if you have anything to do with students learning what they're doing in these protests, then we will kick you out of academia. There might even be lawful or legal consequences besides just losing your license. There's possible like jail threats happening for those individuals, like losing our liberties, not just the freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, but also just not helping students understand what they need to understand before they enter a specific choice. And that is very, well, it's very anti-American. It's very anti-values. It definitely goes against our Constitution, and it won't help our students grow.
So, what do you think people can do to combat this issue?
I always try to tell my students to learn outside of the classroom. Like whatever I have to show you is like a tip of an iceberg. My job is, as I perceive it, like to help students understand that this is a building block of skills and knowledge that you need for the grander scheme of things. You're maybe not going to use history every day of your life, but you should definitely understand how to think critically. You should definitely understand how to read carefully between the lines. You should understand what propaganda sounds like and how to distinguish between points of view and purposes of making statements and who they're directed to. And being able to think critically about those things makes you a much more educated citizen. It's going to make you a more critical citizen. We always, like, the number one rule in politics is accountability. And that's why we have elections. And we should have the freedom to discuss these things. So what we need to do is understand that the power lies with us, the people.
After hearing from these educators, we can conclude that censorship in education was proposed as a way to prevent indoctrination while simultaneously suppressing students. The only way to fight back is to stay informed.